Hey, exobiologists. Unfortunately, I have to open this episode with an apology, essentially. There was a pretty significant error with my recording software during the course of making this episode. The footage is not entirely lost, and the audio isn't actually perfectly fine, but there is very heavy lag throughout a large portion of this video. I will mark out, using the YouTube chapters, the portions that work fine and the portions that don't. But I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to skip this episode. You can also listen to the sections that have lag, basically as like an audio experience, which this game almost half is anyway because of how it functions. But just wanted to give everybody a heads up. I was divided on publishing this one at all, but I figured some portions of it work and the audio's all there. It being such a story-based game, it was probably worth putting up, but that's the situation anyway. I figured out why it happened. I know the next episode is fine, and all future episodes should be fine as well. So, whatever you want to do, thanks for watching up to this point, future episodes, etc. Hope you all have a nice day. Hey exobiologists, welcome to the crew. I'm Sea Lord Janda, and this is my Let's Play of In Other Waters. We've just finished exploring the upper reef, and we've completed our taxonomy for that whole area, including all of these fascinating fungi. And we are now preparing to dive down deeper into the open ocean. What do I have here? I have a shrill sack. Do I have anything else useful? Don't really think so. Yeah. Alright, let's go. Yeah, we're heading north towards the bloom into the open ocean. So that means this way. Here it is, the Northern Rift, and a swift current blocking us. Prime our fancy microbial fuel cell, and let's go. This massive split in the ocean seems almost too violent to be natural. Both sides are almost impossible to see from this center point. This pillar, rising up from the ocean floor deep below, provides shelter from the rift. There's something on the other side. A huge green cloud rising up from the shelf. Okay, that's problematic. Yeah, that must be the bloom, alright. Less dramatically shattered than the central reef, the northern shelf slopes down gently through layers of sediment. Green wall of a vast bloom of some kind rises up ahead. Swirling and obscure. Oh yes, look at that. The bloom. What ecological crisis spawned this green mass? How is it connected to the reef? The answers are anywhere? They're inside. Yeah, it makes sense. And immediate deoxygenization. The water inside is totally anoxic. The suit's rebreather can't function. We'll have to run on reserve oxygen while we're inside this place. Yeah, we don't actually have that much of that either. Bulbous and shiny, these formations sit under a coating of green filaments and growths. Ah, here we are. The water here is highly oxygenated and temporarily filtered of its toxic microbes by this filtering fan. There's life still hanging on inside this toxic bloom. creating safe zones in order to thrive. Perhaps these creatures can help us learn how to exist in these toxic conditions. Let's take some samples and see what effects they have on the bloom when we deploy them. Right, so first of all, this here is a pale, delicate fan, almost bone white against the clouded green of the bloom. They're reoxygenating the water in these handy spotlight shapes. And if we sample them, 0% microbial, 7% colony. 100% useful because we're going to need these things to deoxygenate the water. Bloom oxygenating dust harvested from a filtering fan. Well, that does kind of give it away, but yes. We drop this and it immediately creates a nice, handy, temporary oxygenated zone. This fan sits among shards of rock, trembling in cyclical currents of the bloom. Occasionally it shivers, releasing a flurry of green growths that have gathered among its gossamer spines. Yes, give me more of the oxygenating dust, please. What's this now? A bivalve creature. Bronze shell which sits half buried in the sand. What creature lives inside it, and how can we tempt it out? Some sort of shelled creature. Figure out how to tempt it out. Perhaps a sample? Something that reacts with the microbial growth itself. Is it this? Sure is. It left. A rise of silver silt fills the depression created by the corroded rock shelf. The tip of a shell pokes above it. Is that an eye? Well, yes, obviously. I already started the thing out. There's several directions we could go here. Away from the rock outcrops and fans, the visibility in the bloom falls to near zero. Here, the rocky shelf flakes away into large, fragile sheets with razor-sharp edges. And straight ahead, the shattered rocks catch microbial strings drifting in the water, draping themselves in a shifting web of hair. Well, as per my usual policy, we would go left first. Like stone tumors, these rounded rocks rise up out of the green toxic clouds. The rear side of this fan, free of the green strings of microbial growth, has a pale ivory sheen. The bloom is vast. What could cause and sustain these processes on such a scale? With the oxygen gone, the microbes here must be metabolizing some other substance in order to persist. These fans must be filtering the water of the bloom to feed. Behind each one is a small area of clear, oxygenated air. There's a faint fizzing that emerges from these fans. It appears to be caused by the coating of their spines reacting with the bloom. Ooh. Here's the faint signature of a metal alloy, perhaps the remains of equipment Minae brought into the bloom. What is she doing here? Burning clouds of the bloom roil across the rocks. Microbial life of the bloom blankets every surface. What other life can survive this toxic landscape? Oh, that's got a lot of air there. Through the green clouds, something bright glows in the dark ahead. Into the air place, please. Fizzing membrane of oxygenated water. Is this what allows the species here to survive this constant toxicity? Tucked into the ridge wall, this bubble is filled with oxygenated water, filtered through some unknown microbial process. To the south, the central ridge of the bloom reaches up, disappearing into green clouds of growth. Strange glittering domes marked with ornate patterns of holes sit in the silt. Whatever inhabited them, it's long dead. Sample. These strange forms scattered around inside the bubble. Are these skeletons? They resemble radiolarians, but far bigger in scale. Incredibly ornate. A colony of shattered domes lying in the silvery silt. What were these creatures? I don't know, but let's sample. 0% mineral, 40% skeleton. And it's a sphere fragment. An ornate mineral orb honeycombed with oxygen bubbles. And here, nesting creatures. Within these complex, transparent structures, the blurred activity of many individual creatures can be seen. These must be nests. And they provide handy safe zones, yes. Crystal cylinders. Protected by the sheer wall of the bloom's open ridge. These central ridge, these open nests flutter with movement of their swarms. Oh, sample. Did we already? Or, no, just not there. Now sample. 10% animal, 0% colony. They do well to hold out against the bloom. Should do. The individual creatures seem to be able to digest the microbial growth. We can use this. We should try deploying a colony to see if we can create our own safe zone inside this toxic flood. Well, I already own a colony of these. Nest workers. Sure. They sure do. Much better than the other things did. Splitting the bloom, this vast ridge descends to the north, where it may be possible to cross. Okay, so this is a handy little feature, but we have to go north now. That's not... Is that a useful cave there? Didn't think there was any way south. Not from this angle, at least we can't get there. Oopsies. Sorry about that. The rock here is mottled with dark patches as if burned by electrical currents. Good grief. Rocks jut out from the green at strange angles. A sickly pale green light filters down onto the rocks. I know. We're gonna run out of oxygen and just have to, like, sort of start over a lot in here if we try to read everything. That's basically acceptable to me, I guess. This fan dust is not as useful as the nest workers, but we should still grab some. Pale. Okay, we're calling this bloom fan. We'll update the taxonomy logs later. Okay. Pale, delicate fans that feed on the bloom by filtering it through their bodies, using a catalytic dust to counter its toxicity. Blue flashes flicker across the shattered strata of rock. Well, that's different. Huge plates of layered rock make the floor here into a jagged pattern of small overhangs. The rock outcrops of this area are clogged with strings of microbial growth which dance in the slight current. Shoot. I needed to look at this thing. Bivalve creatures. They bury themselves to hide from the bloom's toxicity, making them one of the few life forms that can survive the bloom. And here, a large bulbous rock emerges out of the rock floor. Silt gathers in the winding cracks that score its surface. We're going to run out of oxygen if we keep going, but oh well. The ghost of some equipment lies in the silt, one of many pieces lost in Minae's expeditions into the bloom. Pretty confident we don't die if we run out of oxygen, we just get reset, which is what I have to do anyway, so... The nearby bubble sits alone in this flat plane, scorched by the chemical processes of billions of metabolizing cells. Yes, override, etc., go home. Literally, there was no way back or out at that point, so the only thing we can do is either let it do this or go back home on our own. Such is the nature of exploring the bloom. There's no way... I don't think there's ever a way, but there's certainly not a way yet to reset our oxygen, or refill our oxygen. Okay, the suit's preservation protocols kicked in, brought us back to the way station. Please keep an eye on our oxygen and power, don't do that again. Fine. I'll just call the thing to take us back, but I'm pretty sure it makes no actual difference. Oh, what happened to my... There we go. It's probably possible to get through the bloom in one run without running out of oxygen, but only if you don't read everything. I fancy myself a pretty fast reader, but if you're gonna read stuff, you're never gonna make it through. The first try. You'd have to just go like this, basically. See if there is anything useful to the north. Among the green, I see tiny blue flashes, occasionally flickering. Yeah, I don't know what that is, to be fair. Silts gathered around the base of this wide outcrop, and the signatures of life forms buried within it can be detected. Yep, I see that. Fan-like fins, which can fold down on a simple set of retractable eyes, enable the creature to totally conceal itself within its shell. Here's another filtering fan. The thin streak of oxygenated water behind the fan shimmers faintly with traces of catalytic dust. Let's grab a little fan dust, why not? To the north, the bloom whips around in cycles of heavy growth like a thunderhead forming. Eaten away by the bloom, this outcrop's marked with a patina of tiny holes. Anchored to the flaking rock, this fan sways softly, dislodging clumps of green growth as it does. The currents of the bloom grow stronger as I move away from the rocky outcrops of its southern side. Low silt drift provides just enough cover for a bivalve shell, which peeks out from beneath the pale wave of sand. And here it is. When active, these creatures feed directly on the microbial growth of the bloom, rapidly clearing a patch of oxygenated water. Yeah, I mean, I can startle them into moving and clearing a little patch, but it only lets us pause. We just have to keep going again. Green clouds drift above a rock floor, honeycombed with holes. A refracted glow casts the shattered ground in a cool light. Ah, and we found another one of these. Okay, let's get into that. Within the protective barrier, the water is oxygenated and clear of microbial clouds. What chemical process is being enacted here? Within the open structure of these nests, swarms of glinting particles form shifting shapes. Like the nests themselves, which are woven from transparent threads, the bubbles which protect them also seem to have delicate skin. Could possibly be damaging to just harvest all these workers. Sure, that's fine. And silicate skeletons, well, I have one, right? We shouldn't need any more. The ornate domes and porous spheres of these skeletons glint with the purity of their silica growths. Yeah, our oxygen doesn't refill even when we're in an oxygenated area, so... A small construction drone from the base, corroded beyond use. What was Minae building out here? This place is annoyingly complex, honestly. A strange fizzing light provides a little comfort in this bizarre wasteland. I feel like that applies only if you're approaching from the south, but maybe I'm wrong. Nothing but green water and broken rock. Shapes of corroded outcrops sit in the west like sleeping giants. Between the sharp rocks, a pale strip of sand leads on through the green. Between these two rocks, a pile of shell fragments gathered. A bronze one glimmers among the green. We can sample it here. Fantastic. Let's try two of them. A fan-finned creature which conceals itself within a shell as a form of protection, and when awoken, feeds on the bloom's toxic microbes. We call them bivalve bloom veins. That's fine. Okay, is there a good sample we could get here? Question mark. 5% animal, 10% shell. Piles of silt have gathered up against these melted rocks, filling in the gaps beneath their strange, distorted overhangs. We have to go home, because we're... Oh, I can't even request retrieval from here. Well, I don't really know what you expect me to do then, because we're just going to run out of oxygen. I mean, okay, I can keep throwing these fan dusts and things out everywhere, but it's not going to be sufficient to hold on forever. Shards of rock with green clouds between turn the seafloor into a miniature landscape. Ah, and we've been here, so... Oh, look, we've run out of oxygen again, apparently. Alright, yeah. Maybe I'm an idiot, but I don't think that there's any... I mean, if you're going to read this stuff and all, I don't think there's much any better way to explore the bloom. We should maybe briefly return home and sample, or analyze the samples we've got so far. Yes, we have the bivalve bloom vein, Bivalvia felfilum. Bloom veins conceal themselves in bronze-colored shells most of the time, only coming out when the opportunity to feed presents itself. Highly attuned to the currents and flows of the bloom, bivalve bloom veins take advantage of any break in the bloom's flow to unfold from their shells and feed. They feed primarily on the bloom's microbial growth itself, able to quickly establish and maintain a feeding zone of oxygenated water. When a bloom vein tires, it will then retreat back into its shell, burying itself in the silt once more. I'd like to understand more about how the bloom veins are able to feed directly on the microbes of the bloom, considering the extremely high toxicity. Perhaps something we uncover here could be useful for future expeditions into the unforgiving landscape of the bloom. Food sample analysis, I think we have that. And then, if that's the bivalve bloom vein, we have the bloom fan, Vanus fellis. Bloom fans are delicate, pale, fan-shaped creatures that filter the toxic microbes of the bloom. As tall as a human, with a wide span of pale spines that form a feather-like shape, they're instantly recognizable in the green clouded water of the bloom. Anchoring themselves into the sand with the central stem, the bloom fan's filtration leads to a small patch of oxygenated water on the leeward side of the fan. Bloom fans seem to be sensitive to currents, adjusting their angle for better catchment of microbial growth, and also can often be seen shivering in order to free their delicate filaments of bloom growth. How they contend with the high toxicity and deoxygenated waters of the bloom is unclear, but perhaps analysis of the dust that coats their spines may offer some clues. Dust sample, yes. We have, oh, I didn't unload, right. Okay, let me take, I'm just going to toss this back in, it's obviously not helpful there. I'm going to take fan dust, some of it, and the spear fragment, and my nest workers, and my bivalve shell. That might actually be all we need, funnily enough, to complete the taxonomy of both of these. Fan dust. And then I have what am I thinking about here? I guess it's just more fan dust, huh? Okay, we don't have everything then. And the nest workers are totally separate too, huh? Okay, well we have this. A close analysis of the fan dust shows that the fans catalyze the bloom's microbes into massively increasing their oxygen production, to the point that the cells themselves are torn apart by the oxygen that bubbles out from within them. This is why the bloom fans can be heard to be fizzing when in close proximity. It suggests that oxygen is the primary nutrient that the fans acquire from filtering. Interestingly, this analysis suggests that the bloom's microbes are oxygen-producing by nature and may be a form of algae. It's only their sheer density blocking their access to sunlight, which means they no longer produce oxygen, but instead choke and poison the ocean. Meanwhile, it seems unlikely that the fans live on oxygen alone. What other nutrient sources might bloom fans use to support themselves? Some stem sample. I don't know why, I really felt like I had some other thing of some use. Okay, well, I've got these. I'll take the other one. I will... You know what? I'll leave the nest workers I've got. We'll get more. Oh! This was the other thing I had, which I forgot to put in there, I think. Yeah. Was that not useful in the lab? Apparently it isn't. Or maybe it's just that I haven't got the workers yet. Yeah. Keep it on me in case it has some other value. Okay, back north. Now the good news is I think there's really only one way that I haven't explored yet. Which is beyond that northern patch of that northern oxygenated nest, so we should be able to make progress on this expedition. Doesn't help, we have to vent some of our oxygen just to make this crossing. Okay, nothing but sharp rocks and green water. We also didn't really explore the central route, but I'm fairly confident it's just going to lead back to the same place. These fans seem to grow close to the rocks. Perhaps it's shelter from strong currents? Yeah. The bloom's blindingly thick here, though to the southwest something glows between the microbial clouds. In the rusted holes of the rock shelf, silt is gathered, forming a rare shelter for life of the bloom. Traveling this deep in the bloom is like swimming through the interior of a vast green dome. Aha, we've been there, so... north at just our best pace. Oh. Layers of rock stick out from beneath the silt, eaten away by the microbes of the bloom. Haven't been here. Okay. Jagged-edged split opens up in the rock shelf, a place for green clouds to gather. I've been there. Okay. Oh yeah, I have. Alright. There was one little spot that I hadn't seen, but I don't think it was anything important. Actually, I think these should fully regenerate, so I think we should be able to take another sample of this now. Yeah. These are pretty handy, so let's grab all we can. now west from here. This will be new territory. Beyond the bubble, the green clouds gather again. The water sapped of all oxygen. What can be fueling this endless growth? Might as well try to limit our oxygen loss. In this northern part of the bloom, there's little shelter from the storm of green. Green in every direction. I can see nothing. There's little to observe this far into the bloom. Oh wait, there we are. This fizzing border between... Yep, no, we're just gonna run. I'll read it in a second. This fizzing border between the bloom and the oxygenated water within is a welcome sight. This nest is the way station's protector. Without its... Oh yeah, there's a way station right here. Without its swarms of iridescent life, the station would be little more than a rust-eaten frame. When their protective bubbles begin to fail, these creatures burst from their nests to repair them, swarming out to weave more threads. From here, the north rolls out over a vast plain, scraped clean of sand by vicious currents. This is as far north as we'll go. So there's nothing north. South, more silicate skeletons. These beautiful, lifeless shapes, like a sculptor's abandoned works, gather around the way station, rocking gently in the current. These... We have one of these already, I'm pretty sure, but do these in themselves do anything? I didn't think they did. Oh, they do create a tiny little burst of oxygen, maybe, but... Okay, well here, the way station. It must have been a struggle to assemble the metallic cage of this way station so deep in the bloom. What led Minae out here? Finally, a way station. With this active, we can call for retrieval all across the bloom. Useful when we run low on oxygen, you think? Open the terminal, we can resupply and see if Minae left any map data behind. Data released to Pilot's Council. Okay, I've got her logs here. A lot of trips back and forth between here and... a laboratory? That means she must have set up a remote lab somewhere deeper into the bloom. She spent months making trips to it, varying some materials from elsewhere in the bloom to there. She was studying something important to her. We have to find that lab. I'll log the coordinates on the dive map when we get back to the base. Okay. Well, this will be the way, but this side of the bubble seems so close to the way station. If it were to shrink, any foothold we have in this green desert would be lost. Yeah, okay, so now we have to go back to base, briefly. Just to progress the story, essentially. Hey, are you back with me? Yep. Good. I wanted to ask you about the bloom. I've been trying to understand what's causing it. It seems unlikely that we're looking at a stable ecosystem. It has to be a unique event. And yet, creatures have rapidly and effectively adapted to these conditions. How is that possible? There's something we aren't seeing. Something Minae was investigating, too. Do you think she knows something we don't? Well, I think she probably knows something we don't, yeah. She has to. Maybe she's holed up in the lab mentioned in the map data, waiting for us. Well, let's find that lab. I mean, I think the chances of her being dead are also pretty high, but I don't think telling Dr. Voss that would be very helpful, so... Let me just analyze everything we've got here in the lab. We analyzed that once already, I'm not... This, we don't have the taxonomy entry, right? So the only thing that's actually useful is this shell. How is this useless? think it's just that we don't have the taxonomy entry for the nests yet. I think that's why. Okay. Well, at least we got a little update for the bloom fan. I thought it wanted food. Oh no, we did. Yeah, okay. For that we did. Stem sample next. For this, yeah, with this we did want food. Somehow we skipped that and got straight to theories. After being lucky enough to come across an entire bloom vein shell, analysis has provided some possible explanations for the creature's neurotoxin resistance. The shell itself was found to have radial patterns of tiny holes in certain areas, all of which were found to have a high concentration of the bloom neurotoxin. It seems that when the bloom vein is in its hidden resting state, it exudes the neurotoxin through its shell, processing the glucose and the bloom growth separately. Okay. This exuded neurotoxin coats the bloom vein's shell and the surrounding area, making the creature potentially deadly to any predator. This adaptation to the bloom is therefore a highly effective defense mechanism, even if the bloom vein itself is constantly on the edge of a frenzied neurotoxin-induced death. Okay, so it steals the neurotoxins out of the bloom and uses them as a defense mechanism. That's helpful. Alright, so that's the part of the bloom that we've explored so far. Here's the way station. We certainly can't go further north. But south... that's where we'd get the remaining samples for the bloom fan and the... something else. The bloom vein, I guess, even though it doesn't really say. I guess this is what it eats, though. And then... okay, the remote lab is down there. So, the direction to head is south. And we've pretty much got to move. Abandoned to the bloom by Minae, it's impossible to tell what this oxidized scrap once was. A bunch of worn equipment. Clumps and trails of microbial growth trail across my visor. Nothing of interest, just more microbial clouds. Yeah, we just have to move through most of this. The little sands gathered around the distended base of this rock. Enough to hide a creature from the bloom, perhaps, and it does, but we've already studied it, so... growths clump and they eaten away. Dents in the rock floor as if tunneling into the planet. World rock formations sit wreathed in green cloud. And there's a fan we can sit on without dying. Fantastic. Twisting in the direction of the bloom's flow, this fan cuts a slit of clear water through the microbial clouds. Guess I'll gather a little bit of this. I mean, this is not really... I mean, it oxygenates a little, but not much. The rock floor here is covered in a thin layer of silt, unmoved by currents or creatures. Oh boy. This part of the bloom is strangely still. Green clouds suspended in the water. Among the green clouds, the polychromal light of a huge bubble glows, so we could use that. Just get inside of it before we die. Thanks. This bubble has an iridescent sheen, its skin being made up of thousands of tiny particles which refract the light. Open geometric forms, beautiful and strange, sit huddled within the skin of the bubble. We have a bunch of skeleton samples already. Guess we'll take one more. It does say fragment. Maybe I need to collect a bunch of them. Ah. Finally, enough data to actually classify these. We're calling them nesting weavers. For the nests and bubbles they weave. Yeah, we'd be pretty screwed without them. Nests of small, iridescent creatures which maintain protective bubbles around their territory, shielding them from the bloom. These delicate silicate forms, like shattered geodesic domes, seem emptied of all life. What lived here before the bloom came? At the center of the bubble, rounded shapes sit in a bed of silt. Around them, the water dances with streaks of refracted light. Refracted or reflected? Refracted, yeah. Okay, more of these, because these are handy. Hopefully we're not destroying the ecosystem, but you know. That's what humans do, so why not? A million tiny grains, perhaps the broken down remains of those silicate skeletons, gather here in soft, sparkling waves. We're only 20 meters below the water still, so... Though physical objects seem able to pass, the fizzing skin of the bubble completely obstructs the bloom's microbial clouds. There's a hole there. We should go for that. The refracted light of the bubble falls across soft drifts of silt. Here the blooms burnt deeper into the rock, revealing strangely smooth surfaces like the inside of an oyster shell. Scorched into the rock, this wide crater reveals layers of broken stone and something smoother, shinier below. Is there anything to be found here, or am I just wandering blindly in this green desert? Ooh, plant. These olive green clumps of bubbles seem to gather with its little current, and the growth of the bloom settles. We're going to freaking die standing here. If I try to read all this, these seem big enough to log and sample. Let's see what they can tell us. Okay. Sure. Among the rocks, the twisted remains of some equipment, most likely brought here by Minae, nice oxidized and caked in growth. Minae was dropping a lot of equipment in this area. And here's a hole. Thick with microbial growth, the edge of the sinkhole is like a ragged green wound in the rock of the ridge. A froth of green bubbles lies around the edge of the hole. We should be able to sample them here. Oh, excellent. We needed those. These bubbles form in the densest areas of bloom growth. They might be the best clue to what the bloom is made from. And enough to classify them right away. Dark green bubbles that form in the most dense areas of the bloom, where there's little current to provide water flow. We won't get much from observing it. I've logged it. Let's analyze it back at base. Okay. Can I go into this sinkhole, maybe? I need to sample this real fast because it's annoyingly outside the bubble I dropped. 15% bacterial, 10% colony. Probably only need one sample. Can I descend? Oopsies. Apparently I can't descend into the hole. This is a misunderstanding. Oh no, I can't. I gotta go that way. Thick fibers of microbial growth cobweb this dark entrance to the central ridge. Alright, I can go there. And then, oh, we're gonna run out of oxygen. Well, if there's no oxygen down there, we're just gonna die, so that's nice. Oh, hey, there's oxygen down here. We're alive. Congrats, everybody. Curved walls streaked with cascades of green bubbles, all glassy and sickly green in the light of the suit's headlamps. Are these the same bubbles I just got samples of up above and almost died for? No. Well, yes, actually, probably. Hold on. Bloom bubble. I'll drop some fan dust. I don't think it's very useful anyway. It's not the same? Oh, it is the same. I just didn't click on it before. Well. Corroded into the tunnel mouth, this seal is stuck fast. The only way in would be to cut straight through. Oh, this is another thing we gotta cut to get through, huh? It's sealed shut. Did Minae do this? It looks older. This has been here a long time. Well, this isn't supposed to have ever been discovered by humanity before, so that's interesting. We're gonna have to go back. Oh god, I have to ascend the link. Well, come on, I pushed the button. Calm down. I triggered this screen before the failure screen triggered. Yeah, that was this here. Or no, here maybe? We would like to get below this point, but it's cut off. Oh, that's interesting though. Hold on. The highest levels of toxicity surround this hole in the bloom's central ridge. If we could get below this point, we could sample the bloom's source. Well, we just discovered evidence that whatever is in this point, I believe, is man-made. Probably. So are we causing the... It would be just like us to somehow already have completely fucked up the ecosystem of an alien planet that allegedly only like 2 of us have ever been on. Well, okay, there's a bloom fan stem somewhere down there. Where exactly were we, do you think? Here, maybe? Could have been here. And then further south, There's Minae's lab. Alright, we gotta sprint pretty far south by the look of it. Oh, I didn't read about the nesting weavers. We'll get to it later. Yeah, so we've been through this run, so we go through it as quickly as possible now. I don't think... I'm curious. Do you think if I took every possible sample and was really slow and patient about it, it's possible to get through here without... well, it's possible to get through here without restarting if you don't read, I think. But if I read everything, I don't know. I'm not patient enough to even try, really, but I think it would be exceptionally difficult. Oh, right, there's a cutoff here. Scattered and eaten away, debris from Minae's expedition spreads out across the rock shelf, gathering tiny drips of sand. I wonder if there's one of the sample things right over here. Probably. Abandoned base. Minae clearly tried to establish a base here, but was unable to resist the bloom. Why so deep into this toxic landscape? Silts gathered in wide drifts around the remains of Minae's makeshift base. What was she looking for here? This is just going to lead us back to that hole. In the shadow of the ridge, the water here is still and clearer than elsewhere. Yeah. Okay. Let's just look back to there. On the pitted surface of the scorched shelf, the lack of currents allowed silt to gather in soft piles. Emerging out of the silt, this rock looks almost like a fossilized flower blooming from a stocky stem. If there's not respite very surely we're just going to die again, but oh well. Silt gathers against the side of the central ridge, which stretches up into the blinding green. Microbial filaments peek out from silt drifts like curious eels. I mean, alright, let's, I guess, use what little we have in the way of samples to try to slow our rate of death, but I don't know if we'll make it to anything or not. Between the wall of the ridge and the corroded shelf is a wide strip of pale and silvery silt. Oh god, this isn't inside the... This fan looks greener than the other, its delicate spines clogged with growth. Even these remarkable creatures can succumb to the bloom. Is the bloom part of a regular cycle, or a single catastrophic event? These strange rocks are beautiful, if only the bloom didn't keep us from lingering longer. Well, that might be something. Hold on, go for that. Get inside that. I'm sorry I skipped a couple things there, but I was inclined to not die. This place was pressurized at some point. It must have taken months of work to establish this lab, and just weeks of corrosion for it to fall into ruin. Looks like Minae was gathering those mineral skeletons, studying them. What secrets have you uncovered, Minae? How are these strange silicon spheres worth all this? Through the green, I can see the skeleton of Minae's remote laboratory, as fractured and remote as Minae herself. Hold on. Extreme completionist in me. It says, south of the Bloom's Ridge, the current's non-existent. Clumps of microbial growth hang in the water above a sandy plain, but we're gonna die because of this, aren't we? Whoopsies. That's on me. I thought I had enough oxygen spare to go back and read the things, but I clearly did not. Well, at least we know where it is now. Just when I had said I didn't feel like dying, too. Apparently I did. That was very avoidable. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Oh well. As I said, we know where it is now, so it should be possible to pretty much beeline straight to it. Do I have to go via there, or is there a way direct south? There's a way direct south from here. That'll probably be faster. Away from the protective bubble, the bloom regains its sickly green. Heavy concentrations of microbial life turn the water here into a flat green wall. The bloom seems endless. Small holes, perhaps burrows, dot the waves of silt. Globular bubbles sit under the overhang of the corroded rock. This would be a good place to sample the bloom's growth. Oh, but I'm gonna die doing it, so that maybe not actually. Oh, this is just bloom bubbles too. I have some of those. Okay. Moving on then. The rocks deep inside this scar shine with a strange smoothness. Around this towering pillar of world rock, opaque green bubbles have gathered, pouring out of the cracks. Again, I think this is just bloom bubbles, yeah. Soft currents push silt into the corroded holes in the rock shelf. And now we're where these come together. Alright. It's off to the left, you think? Let's get into the research site first. Beyond the bubble, the angular shape of the lab's second module sits silent, wrapped with cords of microbial growth. Where? Down here? As we are now, Minae must have relied on the protective bubble these spheres provide to study the bloom and its ecosystem. Are these nesting workers? I need more. Yes, they are. Fair Minae didn't kill them. She probably also sampled them. How much bloom bubble do I need? Probably none. Goodbye. I mean, probably one, but that's... More ornate silicate globes sit in the silt. These bubbles must have been both their refuge and their grave. Ah, dissected skeletons. The equipment here suggests Minae was studying the mineral skeletons. Where she's cut through, the silica shines pure silver. Okay, there's not actually very much in this lab, to be fair. Ah, we can go south, and there's a hole. By the look of it. These modules are so rapidly melting away. Are the bloom's microbes metabolizing the metal itself? The whole metal floor of the module reveals an opening to a passage below. Okay. I still want to see what's over there, but yeah, down into here. And hopefully it's not, you know, deoxygenated. It's not, yay. Minae must have laid this under the lab when she constructed it. The water's clear here, shielded from the microbial clouds. Machines glint in the dark. Papers and tools lie still on silt-speckled surfaces. It's as if the scene's been frozen, captured in time. Okay, hidden workshop, huh? Feels like a story moment. This isn't just a lab, it's a workshop. She was building something down here. It's a suit. Looks like she was modifying an old atmospheric hard suit. How deep was she planning to go? These are verified for beyond 1,000 meters. Shoot. That crashed pretty badly. I don't think I've ever had this game crash before, but definitely did there. Oh, and that's not the color this is supposed to be. Hold on, am I recording? Yes. Okay. She was building something down here. It's a suit. Looks like she was modifying an old atmospheric hard suit. Verified from beyond 1,000 meters. I'm going to see what I can pull from the notes and documents here. Some of them are still partially readable. The lack of water flow must have kept them in good condition. She was definitely speccing this suit for use beyond the drop-off, modifying it with the silicate skeletons. Artificers, she calls them. Exoskeletons of nanofibrous goethite, protecting a silicon carbide core. The pressure resistance of their exoskeleton is unprecedented for a biological material. Oh, so she's collecting those skeletons to build a suit. That's quite something. That would take the depth rating of the hard suit well past 3,000 meters. Incredible. But why go over the drop-off at all? What was pushing her forward? She was incredibly driven. Desperate, even. She mentioned sending ROVs down to the abyssal plain, cobbled together from bits of the base. All of them were lost, and her work on the suit failed. That's where the notes seem to end. The most recent document mentions another way. Did she make it? How? The suit was so close to completion. Why abandon it? We have to make that dive. If I can fix up this suit, we can take it over the drop-off. Perhaps Minae managed it. We need to follow. I can do this. We can do this. Let's get back outside and call in the drone. I've had my oxygen magically refilled too. It's a bit cheaty, but... Also, the whole bloom seems to be broken. Okay, at least it's coloring back into the right horrible color now. Yay. I'll call the drone in just a second. I just want to see what's right over to the west here. For the record, I'm not cheating that much. I think we probably would have been able to make it anyway. Why can't I reach that? If I used these, that's why I used them, just to feel less cheating about it. Outside the protective bubble, this module's been corroded beyond recognition. A froth of bloom growth covering the rusted plates. Pulled from the base generator, Minae looks to have been using the bloom as a vast microbial fuel cell to power her work here. Well, that's quite something. This nest once protected this lab module, but now it's clogged with growth. With the colony gone, we can sample its structure. 20% fibrous, 70% nest. Quite the analysis software we got here. Are my samples? Oh, they are intact. Okay. Alright, now we call this in. Sorry about that crash, guys. I have no idea how much of that will actually make it into the final YouTube video. I imagine if you were on Twitch, you saw all of it. Anyway, home we go. That's the bloom pretty much dealt with. Well, except there's still that thing we need to cut into, but glad to see you're back online. Sorry for the rush, but we gotta move. I've been going through Minae's notes from her lab, and from what I can tell, she attempted a free dive over the drop-off. That sounds kind of suicidal, no? That's why she left her suit behind. She must have opened it up and descended. I know what you're thinking. There's no way she could free dive thousands of meters to the ocean floor. But that's what she did, willingly, and we're going after her. We need to dive now. I've been working on the suit and it's almost ready. I've used sections of Minae's failed hard suit to modify our suit. Now it's a full atmospheric dive suit. Internally, we should be able to maintain 1 atmosphere of pressure for me and that casing of yours. It'll work just like before, but our depth rating is massively increased. We can hit 2, maybe 3,000 meters. The suit's in the bay, so load whatever samples you need. I've marked the drop-off on the map. We can dive there directly and search for any evidence there. I have no idea why she would do this. It's suicide. But she seemed to believe she could do it. You ready to go? I'll be waiting. Suicide, huh? Well, Minae doesn't seem... Well, actually, we don't know very much about Minae. And the fact that she hasn't showed up already suggests that she might be dead. But... she didn't necessarily strike me as suicidal either, so... Finding that laboratory in the Bloom, it's almost like working with personal log number 3 for Dr. Ellery Foss. Finding that laboratory in the Bloom, it's almost like working with Minae again. I still have some good memories of Kepler 62F. Hours diving beneath the ice in that crystalline ocean, sampling the mineral deposits that Minae claimed were evidence of life. Our synchronized rhythms in the lab, working silently but in concert. Lying beside her in the too narrow berth, the creak of pack ice rattling down the base's spine. But those memories come with unwelcome ones attached. Ones of Minae's quiet judgment, her deep sadness, her flaring anger. For a few short months, that subglacial ocean was ours. Blocked from the universe outside by 5 kilometers of ice, its secrets were our own. But then, Minae had other secrets too. Seems like I'll never escape her secrets. Here I am, living among them, drowning in them, picking through them in search of answers. Evie. Yeah, I think she might have kept a few too many secrets. Alright, I'm gonna unload literally everything, because if we're not going into Bloom, I don't think any of this is gonna be useful again immediately. But it might come in handy in the lab analysis. We discovered 2 new species? Oh yeah, well... oh yeah, we have, actually. The nesting weavers. Polymetarius gregis. Weavers are creatures found in the Bloom, where they build elaborate cylindrical nests protected by bubbles of oxygenated water. Iridescent and translucent, weavers themselves are difficult to observe individually due to their size and speed. Each nest is a hive of activity, as is the fizzing skin of the bubbles that protect them, which the weavers carefully maintain. If at any point the integrity of that bubble seems to be collapsing, many weavers will rapidly respond, leaving the nest in swarms to rebuild the bubble's skin. What is it that the weavers are protecting, and how are they shielding themselves so effectively from the Bloom? Analysis of individual weavers might help if we're able to catch some of them. So they just make a bunch of bubbles. How do they make bubbles? And the other thing, in Bacteria Novi, Cyanophyta, blue-green algae. Where were the animalia? Where were those animalia? Interesting, they're jointed shells. Okay, Bacteria Novi, Cyanophyta, or blue-green algae. The Bloom froth, Ventricaria vasphalis. These clusters of opaque green bubbles can be found clinging to surfaces in the quieter areas of the Bloom, where currents don't disturb their growth. They appear to be accumulations of the Bloom's general microbial growth, the green clouds that create this vast, toxic cloud of anoxic ocean water. The Bloom itself is a mysterious phenomenon, similar to terrestrial algae blooms, hence the name Minae gave this part of Gliese 67cc's ocean, but far more potent in its strength and seemingly much longer lasting, as much of the life in this sector has adapted to these extreme conditions. The similarity to terrestrial blue-green algae, aka cyanobacteria, has led me to classify this species as bacterial, but this thesis needs to be tested. Perhaps by analyzing this... My god, my talking has failed me. Perhaps by analyzing this froth, we can understand the underlying chemical processes taking place here. Yeah, this is a big Bloom if it's just an algae bloom. So they want bubble samples and they want to sample the source. Well, the source seems to be whatever that weird, maybe man-made thing that we can't get into was, so we'll get to that. We have bubbles. What can we analyze here? Let's toss in the nest workers themselves. I know we needed those. And the nest fragments. And the Bloom bubble. Seems like these are just... the sphere fragments just aren't useful. I don't know if they'll be useful in the future or what. Anyway, yeah, that did upgrade. That updated also the bivalves because the bubbles are what they eat, right? Sampling and analyzing bubble growths from the bloom shows that they are a form of algae, but with incredible adaptability. They have a distinctive chemical structure, but notable to the study of bloom veins is the presence of a compound similar to domoic acid within bloom bubbles. Domoic acid is a neurotoxin known to produce memory loss and confusion in animals, which suggests that the erratic and frantic feeding behavior of bloom veins when feeding is in reality a form of frenzy brought on by the consumption of the neurotoxin. How this process isn't deadly to the bloom veins is unclear. The volumes of neurotoxin they are consuming are vast, enough to kill a human adult. Perhaps if I can directly examine a bloom vein, or at least its shell, I can understand their resistance. And we already got a shell. It said they have, somehow they radiate the neurotoxin through tiny holes, which in turn makes them incredibly poisonous. And here's our sketch of a bloom vein. It's got a shell of sorts, pinhole eye, a vein to swim with behind it. It's kind of almost mollusk-like, possibly. It is a bivalve, I guess, so. Something else I'm neglecting. We got everything on the bloom fan? No, we don't have the stem. Where was that? We might have to go back and get that. Okay, anyway. The nesting weavers. Behavior. Analysis of weaver specimens shows them to be shelled creatures with a set of jointed mandibles, which they use to handle their threads. These threads are the most fascinating aspect of the weavers. They're silk, but lined with a type of bacteria which lives inside the mouth parts of the weaver. When the threads are produced, they're coated with this bacteria, which aggressively consumes the microbial growth of the bloom. Well, that is fascinating, actually. So they're making their bubbles out of a bacteria that eats the microbes of the bloom. When not producing silk, this bacteria is kept alive by scavenging on the food that the weavers eat, taking their share from particles stuck on the weaver's mouth parts. However, analysis of the weavers themselves still gives no idea of what might lie in their nest. They protect these nests aggressively, but if I could find an abandoned one, it may be possible to sample it. Which we did. The pieces of weaver nest we found offer an insight into the weaver's protective behavior. Wrapped in its threads are thousands of weaver eggs. This suggests that, like ants or termites, weavers are a eusocial species, with many generations of weavers protecting and maintaining a singular, productive female. These weaver queens must be somewhere within the active weaver nests, protected by layers of silken threads and weaver workers. Nest fragments also revealed that the weavers farm their own food within the nest structure, carefully maintaining tubular fields of microbes, which through the weaver's careful cultivation seem to produce oxygen rather than the toxins that poison the bloom. How can this be possible? Yeah, that's kind of odd. Okay, so they're little almost... well, yeah, not to scale. They're tiny, tiny little creatures. Little mandibles, shells. They're ant-like, sort of, but they might actually be even smaller than that. And they make nests, which they have woven out of these... microbe-eating bacteria, I guess, the silk. Well, they're quite handy to us, anyway. And then the bloom froth. Laboratory analysis of the... we read this, right? Yeah. Laboratory analysis of the froth has shown that each large bead in the bloom froth is a single microbial colony bound by a gelatinous film, much like terrestrial cyanobacteria of the order Nosticales. However, unlike this terrestrial species, the bloom froth displays an incredible ability to actively modify their internal chemistry to whatever conditions they find themselves in. Most bloom froth appears to have diverted to consuming metallic compounds found in unusual abundance in the region of the bloom, rather than sunlight. This has led to the bacteria outputting large volumes of neurotoxins rather than oxygen. It's this which has left the bloom both anoxic and toxic. To understand more, we need to find the source of this destructive bacteria, which is probably the man-made thing that we can't get to. Is there something I can access over here? Interesting. That source I know we can't get to. But this bloom fan stem, I think maybe we can. That's the lab. That's probably where the cave is. Okay. I suspect the stem is down here. We just need to find it. So I'm going to make a sprint for that before we officially conclude the bloom episode. We can't get to the source, but I'd like to clear everything else out before we head down into the abyssal plane. Should be pretty quick as long as we can find it. I know it's probably off that way a little, but I want to grab, I want to make my way to this nesting weavers thing and sample them. So that I can have some reserve oxygen patches. Okay. Now, I think it should be down here somewhere. Possibly over here? Aha. A thin gap between a boulder and the towering ridge. And behind it, a dead fan lies in a bed of green, toppled by the weight of the microbial growth. Its stem is exposed. We can sample it here. Perfect. Annoying that we missed it before, but there we go. 20% animal, 30% tissue. One fan stem. Piece of stem sampled from a dead fan creature. Okay, and that will conclude the bloom, except for that mysterious lab that's in this hole here that we can't get to.